It was the summer of 2006, and Mark, a truck driver from Texas, had been on the road for nearly 12 hours straight. The highway stretched endlessly before him, a ribbon of black cutting through the empty desert. It was 2 in the morning, the kind of hour when your eyelids get heavy and the silence in the cab starts to feel unbearable. He had the radio on low just to keep himself from drifting off when he saw her. Standing on the side of the road, barely illuminated by the truck's headlights, was a woman in a white dress. She was waving her arms frantically, stepping forward as if she were desperate to be seen. Mark instinctively slowed down, his heart racing with surprise. Hitchhikers weren't unusual, but at this hour, in the middle of nowhere, it was unsettling. He pulled onto the shoulder, the gravel crunching under the weight of the rig. The woman hurried to the passenger side, her pale face lit by the headlights. She looked terrified, breathless, as though she had been running for miles. Mark rolled down the window and she leaned in, her voice trembling as she explained that her car had broken down miles back and she needed a ride to the nearest gas station. Against his better judgment, Mark unlocked the door. She climbed in without hesitation, folding her hands tightly in her lap. The cab filled with a strange, cold air that made Mark shiver, though the night outside was humid and warm. For the first few minutes, the ride was quiet. Mark introduced himself, but she didn't respond. She just stared straight ahead, her eyes fixed on the dark stretch of highway. He tried again, asking where she had been heading, but her silence made the air feel heavier. Her skin looked pale, unnaturally so, and her lips were pressed together like she was holding back a scream. Mark gripped the wheel tighter, feeling the unease creep up his spine. The radio fizzled with static, even though it had been playing clearly before she entered. He reached to adjust the dial, but then froze when he noticed something that made his stomach churn. The woman's feet. They weren't touching the floor of the truck. She sat perfectly still, hands in her lap, but her body seemed to hover just slightly above the seat. Mark's heart pounded in his chest as he glanced at her face, trying not to make it obvious that he had noticed. For a second, her eyes darted toward him, and what he saw nearly made him slam on the brakes. Her eyes weren't normal. They glowed faintly, like dying embers, and her lips curled into the faintest of smiles, though it looked wrong, stretched too far, too forced. Mark swallowed hard and focused on the road. Every muscle in his body screamed to stop the truck, to kick her out, but fear held him frozen. Minutes dragged by like hours, the silence punctuated only by the static from the radio. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, Mark muttered that he would take her to the next town, just a few miles ahead. That was when she finally spoke. Her voice was a whisper, but it echoed unnaturally in the cab. "Don't stop," she said. "He's still looking for me." Mark's blood ran cold. He wanted to ask what she meant, who she was talking about. But when he turned his head to look at her, the seat was empty. His chest tightened in terror. He blinked rapidly, his hands shaking on the steering wheel. She was gone. No sound of a door opening, no shift in the air, nothing. Just gone. But her faint whisper lingered in the cab as though it had seeped into the very metal of the truck. Panicked, Mark pulled off at the next gas station, stumbling out of the truck as if he could escape the nightmare by stepping into the fluorescent glow of the pumps. The attendant gave him a strange look as he leaned against the counter, catching his breath. When Mark described what had happened, the man behind the counter only nodded grimly. He told him he wasn't the first trucker to see her. That stretch of highway was cursed, haunted by the spirit of a woman who had died in a car crash years ago. She had been trying to flag someone down for help, but no one stopped. She burned alive when the car went up in flames. Since then, drivers claimed to see her on the side of the road, always in a white dress, always waving for help. Some said she appeared in their vehicles, silent and cold, until they realized the truth too late. Mark never drove that stretch of highway again, but he never forgot the sound of her whisper or the look in her glowing eyes. Sometimes, late at night when he's alone on a dark road, he swears he still sees a flicker of white in his rearview mirror, standing just at the edge of the headlights, waiting for the next driver to stop.